I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am, 31 years old and finally ready to tell it. My name is Vivian, and this is how my life changed forever when I was 14. Back then, we were what you'd call a normal family, just mom, dad, and me living in our cozy house on Maple Street. Dad was an amateur painter who worked part-time at the local art supplies store, and mom was studying to become a therapist. We weren't rich, but we were happy, especially when my dad would set up his easel in our backyard and teach me about colors and brush strokes. Everything fell apart when Dad had his accident. One minute he was driving to pick up new canvases on a regular Tuesday morning, and the next, he was gone just like that. Mom fell apart, completely fell apart. She'd spend hours just staring at Dad's unfinished paintings, and I had to learn to take care of myself pretty quick. The house felt empty without the smell of oil paints and Dad's gentle humming while he worked. "Vivian, honey," she said to me one evening about a year after Dad died, "I need to tell you something important." She was sitting at our kitchen table, fidgeting with her coffee cup like she always did when she was nervous. "I've met someone. His name is Marcus, and he makes me happy again." I should have seen it coming really, the late-night phone calls, her suddenly caring about her appearance again, the mysterious errands she had to run. But when she told me Marcus would be moving in with us along with his 8-year-old daughter Tiffany, it still felt like a punch to the gut. My chest tightened as I thought about Dad's paintings still hanging on our walls. "But Mom," I protested, "it's only been a year since Dad." "I know, sweetie," she cut me off, her voice taking on that clinical tone I'd started hearing more often. "But as I've learned in my therapy training, prolonged grief isn't healthy. Marcus is a successful lawyer, and Tiffany needs a mother figure. We can be a family again." A family, that's what she called it when Marcus moved in 2 weeks later, bringing boxes of legal documents and his daughter who looked at our house like it was some kind of museum she was meant to inherit. Tiffany was this tiny thing with perfectly styled auburn hair and intelligent green eyes, exactly the kind of precocious little girl my mom had always wanted. "Look at her, Vivian," Mom would say, watching Tiffany practice violin or work on advanced math problems, "isn't she brilliant? She needs so much intellectual stimulation at this age." She needed stimulation, and my mom was more than happy to provide it, all of it, every last bit she had, which apparently left nothing for me. I watched as Mom transformed herself into the perfect stepmother for Tiffany while I became invisible. The first time I really understood how things would be was during dinner about a week after they moved in. Marcus's mother had come over, this woman who had become the bane of my existence. She took one look at me and said, "Oh, what a tall girl you are." Then she reached over and gripped my chin firmly, her fingers cold and calculating. "Such potential," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "but you know, Marcus, this household would run so much more efficiently if she wasn't." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. I saw the way she looked at me, like I was evidence in a case that needed to be dismissed. That night I found red marks on my jaw where she'd gripped me, but when I tried to show Mom, she just shook her head dismissively. Life settled into a routine, but not one I was part of. Mom, Marcus, and Tiffany became this perfect little unit, always discussing legal cases, attending cultural events, or sitting around the dinner table debating current affairs like some intellectual salon. Meanwhile, I got shipped off to our neighbor Grace's house more and more often. "Vivian, honey," Mom would say, not quite meeting my eyes, "Grace needs help at the library today. You don't mind, do you?" So often I'd go to Grace's house where at least someone seemed happy to see me. Grace's daughter Lily was 6 and absolutely enchanting with these wild curls and a mischievous grin that could brighten any room. She'd run to me calling Vivi. Vivi, the moment I walked through the door. Playing with Lily was actually the highlight of my days. We'd create elaborate art projects, have pretend gallery openings with her stuffed animals, or read stories where I'd act out all the characters. Grace would bring us hot chocolate and join in sometimes, asking about my drawings and actually listening to my dreams of becoming an artist. It felt normal, like family should feel. Back at home, it was a different story. Marcus's mother, Mrs. Blackwood, had practically moved in, or at least it felt that way. She was always there, rearranging Dad's artwork, criticizing our pedestrian, decorating choices, suggesting more sophisticated alternatives, and Mom jumped to make every change she suggested. These amateur paintings should be in storage, not displayed, she'd declare, and next thing you know, my mom would be carefully taking down Dad's watercolors. The living room needs pieces with actual artistic merit, she'd insist, and Mom would spend weekends researching expensive gallery pieces. But her favorite hobby was still tormenting me. She'd grip my shoulders with her bony fingers, her touch clinical and cold. "Still carrying yourself like a child, I see," she'd say, squeezing harder, "such poor posture. Your mom really should have taught you proper deportment." Or she'd catch me sketching on the couch. "Look at her wasting time with those silly drawings. No discipline whatsoever. You'll never catch my Tiffany engaging in such frivolous activities." Marcus was just as bad, but in his own way. If I accidentally spilled paint water or knocked over my easel while working on art projects, he'd explode. "You know how much those art supplies cost?" he'd yell with his sharp, condescending voice. "Of course, you don't. You've never earned $1 in your life. Just a dependent living off my generosity." "I'm sorry," I'd mumble, trying to clean up whatever I'd spilled. "Sorry doesn't restore property, does it?" he'd continue. "You consume resources I provide, wear clothes I purchase, live in my house, and what do you contribute? Nothing. Just create messes and waste materials." Each time something like this happened, I'd look to Mom, hoping she'd say something, but she'd just busy herself organizing Tiffany's study materials, pretending not to hear. The day I turned 16, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be Marcus's dependent anymore. I got up early that morning and walked around the neighborhood with a portfolio I'd created, offering art tutoring services to younger kids. By afternoon, I had 3 families interested. "You want to teach art?" Mrs. Peterson from 2 streets over asked when I knocked on her door. "What about all that schoolwork you teenagers have these days?" "I can manage both," I assured her, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I get excellent grades in art history. I'm very patient with children." She looked skeptical but invited me in to meet her daughter anyway. "All right, let's give it a try. Emma needs help with her art projects twice a week, $15 per session." That was just the beginning. Soon I was tutoring 5 different kids, helping Grace organize library art programs on weekends, and assisting elderly Mrs. Chen with cataloging her late husband's art collection. Grace officially hired me as Lily's art instructor, which felt wonderful since I'd been teaching her informally all this time anyway. I saved every dollar, didn't spend a cent on magazines or movies or any of the things other kids my age bought. After 3 months, I had enough to buy what I'd been dreaming of, a professional art set with quality brushes and paints. Nothing too expensive, just a decent starter kit, but it was mine. The day I brought it home, I couldn't stop smiling. I had something that was just mine, that nobody could say they'd provided for. I was organizing the supplies in my room when Tiffany barged in without knocking, as usual. "What's that?" she demanded, pointing at my art supplies. She was 11 now and had gotten into the habit of analyzing everything she saw. "It's my new art set," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I bought it with money from my tutoring jobs." Tiffany's eyes narrowed with that calculating look she'd inherited from Marcus. "But I need art supplies for my medical school applications." "Daddy." Before I could stop her, she was running downstairs calling for Marcus. I heard his measured footsteps on the stairs, and my stomach dropped. "What's the matter, sweetheart?" he asked from my doorway, his voice smooth and controlled. "Vivian has expensive art supplies and I need them for my portfolio," Tiffany announced, pointing at me accusingly. What happened next still makes my blood boil when I think about it. Without a word, not one single word, Marcus walked over, gathered up my art supplies, and handed them to Tiffany. "Daddy will make sure you have everything you need, princess," he said to her, completely ignoring me. I was so angry I could barely see straight. The next day at school, I told my art teacher, Mrs. Collins, everything about the supplies, Marcus's constant psychological manipulation, and Mom's professional detachment from her daughter. She listened quietly, her face growing more concerned with each detail, then took me to the guidance counselor's office. By that afternoon, Mom was called in for an emergency meeting. I wasn't in the room, but I heard tense, professional voices discussing family dynamics and emotional neglect. When Mom came out, her face was flushed with embarrassment and professional humiliation, but she had my art supplies in a bag. She thrust it at me without making eye contact, her hands trembling slightly. "Here," she said through clenched teeth, "I hope you're satisfied with destroying my reputation now." That night, after Tiffany had sulked dramatically for hours about losing her precious art supplies, Mom came to my room with that clinical expression I'd learned to fear. "How dare you," she hissed, her voice taking on that cold therapist tone. "How dare you go behind our backs like that? Do you know how humiliating that was for my professional standing? You're nothing but a manipulative, attention-seeking child." That was the last thing she said to me for 2 weeks. She and Marcus both treated me with cold, clinical distance, walking past me like I was a failed case study they dismissed, talking around me like I wasn't worth their professional attention or intellectual engagement. Even at dinner, they'd discuss complex legal cases and Tiffany's impressive academic achievements without acknowledging my presence. 2 years passed in pretty much the same way, me working my tutoring jobs, trying to keep my head down at home, and focusing obsessively on school. I threw myself into my studies with desperate intensity, knowing education was my only ticket out of this suffocating environment. When senior year came around, I applied to every art scholarship I could find, researching programs late into the night. The day the letter arrived from State College, I nearly threw up from nervousness, my hands shaking as I held the envelope. I waited until I was alone in my room to open it, my hands trembling so bad I could barely tear the envelope without destroying it. "Dear Miss Thompson, we are pleased to inform you." I had to read it 3 times before it sank in, the words blurring through my tears. Full scholarship for art history with a guaranteed path to MBA. They were giving me a full academic scholarship with living expenses included. I'd done it against all odds. I was going to college, and I wouldn't have to ask Marcus for a single dollar or endure his condescending lectures about financial dependency. Like an idiot, I thought maybe this achievement would make them proud, maybe this would finally make Mom see me as her daughter again. I waited until dinner that night when everyone was sitting around the table discussing Tiffany's latest academic triumph. "Mom, Marcus, I have some important news," I started, my heart pounding against my ribs. "I got accepted to State College with full honors." Marcus's wine glass paused halfway to his lips, his lawyer instincts immediately alert. "You applied to college without consulting me? Who do you think you are, living under my roof, consuming resources I provide, and making unilateral legal decisions like this?" "But it's a full scholarship with living expenses," I tried to explain, desperation creeping into my voice. "You won't have to pay anything at all." "Damn right I wouldn't pay anything," he said with that cold lawyer precision, "not a single cent for an ungrateful dependent like you. Always operating in secret, scheming behind our backs like some criminal." I looked at Mom desperately, searching her face for any trace of maternal pride or support. She was staring at her plate, her therapist mask firmly in place, completely detached from the emotional crisis unfolding. "Mom," I pleaded, my voice breaking, "please say something. Why aren't you supporting your own daughter?" She finally looked up, but her eyes were clinically detached, studying me like a particularly troublesome patient. "Why should I? You've never shown any respect for this family. You've never integrated with Marcus or accepted our new dynamic. All you've done is try to undermine my marriage from the very beginning. Respect?" I felt something snap inside me like a wire pulled too tight. All the years of accumulated hurt and suppressed anger came pouring out in a torrent. Respect him? He's a controlling manipulator and a psychologically abusive person. There's absolutely nothing to respect. The slap came out of nowhere, sharp and shocking. 1 second I was standing there shaking with righteous anger, the next my cheek was stinging and Mom was standing in front of me, her hand still raised like a weapon. "Get out," she whispered with deadly calm, then louder, "get out of my house immediately." I touched my burning cheek where she'd struck me, feeling like I was trapped in some kind of surreal nightmare. I ran upstairs in a complete daze, grabbing my backpack and stuffing it with whatever clothes I could reach, my phone, precious art supplies, school documents, and the little bit of cash I had saved. Everything else would have to stay behind forever. I could hear Tiffany's satisfied, triumphant laughter downstairs, Marcus's measured, controlling voice, but it all seemed impossibly far away. 10 minutes later, I was standing on Nova's front porch in the cold night air. Nova from my advanced art class, the only person I could think to call in my desperation. When she opened the door and saw my face, saw the hastily packed backpack and the tears I hadn't even realized were falling, she didn't ask any questions. She just pulled me inside and held me while I fell apart. I was sitting in Nova's kitchen, stressing about how I'd manage college while being essentially homeless, when her Aunt Victoria walked in. "So you're the girl Nova's been telling me about," she said, looking me up and down with discerning French eyes. "Need a job?" Turned out Victoria owned this sophisticated art gallery downtown, and she had an empty loft apartment above it. Before I knew what was happening, she was offering me both. "Half rent, gallery access, flexible hours around your classes," she said like it was no big deal. "The loft needs some work, but it has perfect lighting and is secure." I started as a gallery assistant, learning everything I could about the art world. Victoria was demanding but fair, teaching me things they'd never covered in my art history classes at college. "Watch how that collector keeps questioning the provenance," she'd say. "That's why we document every piece's history, every exhibition record. Authenticity matters in this business." The loft was compact, with barely room for a mattress and easel, but it was mine. No Marcus lecturing about legal obligations, no Tiffany analyzing my every move, no Mrs. Blackwood's judgmental stares. Just my own space where I could paint, study, and finally breathe. By my senior year, Victoria had promoted me to curator assistant. I graduated with my art history degree on a Saturday and was back at work Monday morning, now handling exhibitions, client relations, and artist management. "You've got an eye for this," Victoria told me 2 years later, after I'd worked my way up to gallery manager. She was sitting in her office, looking tired but satisfied. "Nova tells me you two have been talking about partnership," she said. I shifted nervously in my chair. "We discussed it, but..." "Good," she cut me off, "because I'm retiring to Provence." My heart nearly stopped. "The gallery's going to Nova," she continued, "but she needs someone who knows this business inside and out. Someone like you." I stared at her, barely breathing. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying you two should run this place together. Equal partners. You've got the expertise, she's got the vision. Could be a powerful combination." Nova and I stayed up all night talking it through. I had savings, every penny I could spare from the last few years, and she had ideas, showcasing emerging artists, expanding into digital art. "We could do this," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Really do this, Vivian. Make it our own artistic legacy." So we did. I invested everything I had, and we turned Victoria's traditional gallery into something uniquely ours. For years after that, we opened our second location in the Arts District. Sometimes, walking through our galleries, watching patrons admire the carefully curated exhibitions, I'd think about my family. 11 years had passed since that night, since Mom slapped me and threw me out. They were still in the city. I knew that much from occasional glimpses of Tiffany's social media posts, but we lived in different worlds now. One day, Nova and I were in our office above the main gallery, surrounded by exhibition catalogs and artist portfolios, when we heard the reception starting downstairs. "Sounds like the medical school graduation celebration is here," Nova said, glancing at the booking schedule. 50 people should be excellent for networking." We had this tradition, something we started when we first took over the gallery. We'd go out and engage with guests, get their feedback on exhibitions, make them feel part of the art community. It was one of the things that distinguished us from other galleries. "I'll go greet them," I said, slipping on my tailored blazer and adjusting my curator badge. "You finish reviewing those artist contracts." The sound of cultured conversation and champagne glasses got louder as I headed downstairs. A prestigious group like this could mean significant future commissions, maybe even major donations. I straightened my badge and put on my most professional gallery owner smile. Then I saw them. My mom, sitting at the center table, her hair grayer than I remembered but styled with expensive precision as always. Marcus next to her, somehow looking both older and exactly the same with that calculating lawyer expression. And Tiffany in an elegant designer dress, holding hands with a guy in a perfectly tailored suit. It was my stepsister's medical school graduation celebration. For a second, I thought about retreating, but before I could move, Mom's eyes met mine, and I saw the recognition hit like a physical blow. Well, look who it is, she announced loudly, making heads turn with practiced dramatic flair, our gallery attendant for the evening. Marcus's face twisted into that familiar condescending sneer. 31 years old and still working service jobs, he scoffed with lawyer precision, can't say I'm surprised by this outcome. I opened my mouth to speak, but Mom cut me off with clinical efficiency. I always knew you'd end up like this, she said, her voice dripping with professional satisfaction. Look at your sister. Medical degree, psychiatry residency, marrying a successful surgeon. And you, still wearing a name tag and serving others. Tiffany laughed with that superior medical student arrogance, squeezing her fiancé's hand. Maybe she'll clean our display cases tonight, right, Daddy? Show us her special custodial skills. The floors too, Marcus stood up, swaying slightly with expensive wine. He was intoxicated on his own authority. In fact, he slurred with legal pompousness, let's give her something to clean up right now. It happened so fast. He grabbed one of my dad's small-framed watercolors from the memorial display and hurled it to the floor. The crash of breaking glass made everyone gasp in horror. I felt a sharp sting on my cheek and reached up to touch it. My fingers came away red from the glass shards. Oops, Marcus smirked, staring at the blood trickling down my face, better get a dustpan, gallery girl. My blood was boiling as I stood there, feeling it drip down my cheek while staring at my dad's destroyed painting. 11 years of hurt and anger were bubbling up, and I was ready to unleash everything I'd ever wanted to say to them. But before I could open my mouth, Nova's voice cut through the tension with gallery authority. I believe this situation requires immediate professional intervention, she said, walking up with the calm command she'd learned from her Aunt Victoria. She was holding our venue agreement, bound in leather with our gallery's gold-embossed logo. Nova cleared her throat and addressed the room with curatorial precision. According to our venue agreement, Section 3.2, any guests who verbally abuse or physically harm our staff or ownership. She paused meaningfully, gesturing toward me, will be immediately removed from the premises. Ownership? Mom's mouth fell open in professional shock, what are you talking about? Oh, Nova said, her smile razor-sharp with artistic satisfaction, didn't you know? You're speaking to Vivian Thompson, co-owner of this gallery and 2 others across the cultural district. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched the color drain from my mom's face as she looked around the gallery. Really looked at the museum-quality lighting, the prestigious artist reviews on the walls, the sophisticated collectors, all the success she'd never bothered to acknowledge. That's impossible, Marcus sputtered, but I could see his lawyer instincts recognizing the truth. Nova wasn't finished with her professional demolition. Furthermore, she continued with gallery authority, in cases of property destruction and assault, we reserve the right to terminate events immediately without refund. She turned to me with respectful deference. Vivian, your decision. I straightened my blazer, wiped the blood from my cheek with a gallery tissue, and found my voice. Clear the exhibition, I commanded our staff with gallery owner authority, all 50 guests need to leave immediately. The gallery assistants sprang into professional action, efficiently guiding guests toward the exit. That's when I heard the familiar entitled screech. Mrs. Blackwood, Marcus's mother, clutching her champagne glass like evidence in a legal case. You can't do this, she shrieked, exactly the same way she used to lecture about my posture while gripping my shoulders, this is my son's daughter's graduation celebration. One of our security guards, James, approached to escort her out, but she yanked back, sending champagne flying across a nearby sculpture. Help! Help! They're assaulting a former judge. Marcus lurched forward, his face purple with legal outrage. Get your hands off my mom. He started toward me with clenched fists, but our professional security team was faster. 2 guards stepped between us while a third announced that the police were already en route. Tiffany had dissolved into tears, her perfect medical graduation celebration ruined. Mom, do something, she wailed with medical student drama. But Mom just stood there, her therapist composure completely shattered, looking utterly lost. The woman who had once slapped me and thrown me out of my home now couldn't even meet my eyes. The next 30 minutes were controlled chaos. The police arrived first, taking statements from multiple witnesses who'd recorded everything on their phones. Marcus was handcuffed and led out, still shouting legal threats. The ambulance arrived next, and a paramedic cleaned and bandaged the cut on my face while guests filed out, murmuring about the dramatic scene they'd witnessed. My phone rang 3 days after the incident, the sound cutting through my morning routine. Unknown number flashing on the screen. Vivian? Mom's voice was softer than it had been at the gallery, almost pleading with that therapeutic manipulation I remembered. Please don't hang up on me. I waited in silence, my hand gripping the phone tighter. Look, about Marcus, the police are pressing serious charges. You need to drop them immediately. He could lose his law license over this incident. No, I said simply with quiet finality, and hung up. Within hours, the coordinated social media attacks began with calculated precision. Mom's first post was long and dramatic, painting herself as the victim of a vindictive gallery owner who'd maliciously ruined her precious daughter's medical graduation celebration. The comments filled with sympathy for her, people vowing never to visit our galleries or support unprofessional art venues run by unstable owners. Then Tiffany joined in strategically, writing about her psychotic stepsister who couldn't stand to see her little sister succeed brilliantly in medicine. The post spread quickly through professional medical and legal community groups, gaining traction. Nova found me staring at my phone screen, reading the calculated lies spreading across social media. You know we have it all on high-definition video, right? She said calmly. The security system Victoria installed years ago automatically zooms in and records crystal-clear audio when it detects raised voices or aggressive movements. The footage was crystal clear with professional gallery quality resolution. You could hear every single word, Marcus's threatening legal language, my mom's clinical insults delivered with therapist precision, the devastating crash of Dad's destroyed painting. And Mrs. Blackwood's entitled screaming about judicial authority. I posted it strategically in the comments of Mom's manipulative rant with a simple message: here's what actually happened at our gallery that night. The video exploded overnight across art community networks and cultural platforms. Other guests from the graduation celebration started posting their phone recordings too, creating a comprehensive record. Someone had captured the perfect angle of James trying to professionally escort Mrs. Blackwood out. Her face contorted with judicial rage, expensive champagne flying everywhere, his professional calm never wavering despite the chaos. That single clip alone got millions of views across cultural platforms worldwide. Gallery drama started trending locally, then nationally, then internationally. Prestigious art blogs and cultural magazines picked up the compelling story. Family crashes medical graduation at daughter's own successful gallery made headlines in industry publications. Comment sections filled with people sharing their own painful stories of family estrangement and toxic professional parents. The consequences came swiftly through established professional channels. Marcus's prestigious law firm, already embarrassed by his public arrest, couldn't ignore the viral video of him violently assaulting his stepdaughter at her own successful gallery. They quietly suspended him pending a thorough internal investigation. The court fined him heavily for assault and deliberate destruction of valuable artwork. Mom tried desperate damage control, frantically deleting her posts, but screenshots lived forever in professional circles. Tiffany's competitive residency program questioned her character and family background, not wanting to be associated with the viral scandal. Mrs. Blackwood became an internet meme, the champagne judge, her screeching face splashed mockingly across social media platforms. Watching the view count steadily climb on that damning security footage, I remembered something I used to tell myself desperately in the dark days after Mom kicked me out. Someday things would be completely different. Someday I'd have the precious chance to reconcile with my family. Someday they'd realize what they'd done and try sincerely to make it right. But seeing them in my gallery that night, watching them desperately humiliate me after all these successful years and even my hard-earned artistic achievements, I finally understood clarity. Some things simply can't be fixed or repaired. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt or restored. The video ended up being excellent for business exposure, but that wasn't why I kept it permanently pinned to my profile. I kept it there as a powerful reminder, both for myself and for others watching, that sometimes the happy ending isn't about forgiveness or reunion. Sometimes it's about accepting that it's perfectly okay to walk away and never look back.